Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to experience the Gut Check Project, talking science, health, and innovation that you can actually use. But this isn't just another health show. We're here to have fun and make your time enjoyable. Well, while you are enjoying yourself, know that even though the GCP covers some health topics with healthcare pros, we are not your doctors. So use our show to entertain your mind and not for medical advice. And now, here are your hosts of the Gut Check Project, Dr. Ken Brown and Eric Rieger.
Hello, Gut Check Project fans and KBND Health family. I'm your host, Eric Rieger, joined by that guy, Dr. Kenneth Brown. It's episode number 90. Ken, once again, fantastic special guest.
Absolutely. This is a super cool episode. Episode 90 is a really important episode. And we are fortunate enough to have the one, the only Rachel Scheer superstar. Rachel Scheer. Rachel is a world-renowned nutrition expert. She got her, Rachel's journey as a nutrition coach began in weight loss and athletic performance. She did get her BS in nutrition sciences from Baylor University. And then by using her knowledge in nutrition and dietetics, Rachel became an expert on gut health and hormonal balance and completed her certification in functional medicine through the Kalish Institute. Is it Kalish?
Kalish Institute.
Kalish Institute. We have a lot of like-minded people in the room here. Rachel's nutrition philosophy is one that looks at the total person. She uses functional lab testing to address the root cause of any imbalances in the body and creates a customized program consisting of dietary recommendations, supplements, and lifestyle modifications to optimize your health and well-being. That being said, she's also a super huge influencer on Instagram and other social media platforms. So we are really excited to have Rachel. She's super smart, she's beautiful, and she is a businesswoman. And when you hear her story, it's going to empower you to do more with your life because it's really, really cool. Rachel, welcome to the Gut Check Project.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here, and it's been quite some time since I was on the last show. What was that? Three years ago?
3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's got to be at least that.
This is our first repeat guest, by the way.
Ooh,
ever.
I'm honored. Episode 90, repeat guest.
That's right.
Talking all things gut health.
I think you're on episode 2, or 3 or 4, the first time.
The beginning. And I think I just launched my podcast to Scheer Madness, where you had came on mine.
Oh, I came on your podcast, and we had your puppy.
We had my puppy. Yes. It was so funny because she sat on my lap, actually, the whole episode where we were recording. And then we were like, surprise, there's a dog here. It was great.
That's right. That was awesome. So this bio doesn't do justice
By the way,
all.
that's an old bio. That one's like so old. I'm no longer in McKinney, Texas, but it's good.
I didn't.
Good.
Yeah, I figured that. I tried to leave some of the other stuff out there that I thought had changed. So
you got the main core, the root cause, the functional medicine approach, and really getting into, gut health with the key for
a little bit closer there. There we go.
You really got the core things there with taking a holistic approach, getting to the root cause. And with my business, I take a gut-centric approach. So I'm really excited to dive into that because you were a part of my journey actually at, way back when I struggled with all of my gut issues.
Yeah, a really long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that because your journey, where you're at now, if people look at you, they go, you're this super successful businesswoman. You've got a couple businesses. You've got this incredible social media presence where you help so many people and, you do a lot of things discussing this and helping people through that one aspect that, you have all those people looking at that. And then you have all these patients. You've got other nutritionists that work for you. They're like, oh, wow, she's just so lucky. And, she just kind of fell into this. But
pure luck.
Yeah. Like we always say, we always kind of joke, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. So I think a lot of people don't really know your origin story, which really got you here. So let's just take it from the very beginning, wherever you want to start.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated with nutrition and dietetics. I actually grew up as an athlete, as a gymnast and a dancer. And when I went off to Baylor, I wanted just to help people look good naked. I wanted to help them get 6-pack abs. That's what I was passionate about. It was all about the physical side and about the athletic performance side of everything that I did. And, I did that for a while. And to be honest, I was really freaking good at it. I competed in bodybuilding for 3 years. I was winning first place trophies. And it was actually right before I was about to go pro that I started to deal with a lot of my own health issues. And for me at the time, my entire life had been, fitness, had been bodybuilding, had been just the physical part. And that's really what I thought health was. I thought it was just go to the gym, lift some heavy things around every single day, eat, relatively healthy, as long as you're hitting your macros, your carbs, your fats, and your protein every single day, then you would be healthy and fit. And here I was at probably, I don't even know, 10% body fat up on stage. And I looked like the epitome of health, but physically on the inside, I was completely empty. And emotionally, I had anxiety and I had depression, would barely want to get out of bed most days. And then, physically, I started to deal with a ton of health issues. I had no menstrual cycle anymore. My thyroid had completely plummeted. My skin was a wreck. And the most bothersome issue was really my gut, where I could literally no longer use the restroom anymore. I was chronically bloated to the point where I looked 6 months pregnant every single day. And it wasn't just one of those little belly bloats. It was excruciatingly painful too, to go along with it, where, I felt at the time I was being betrayed by my body, because here I was, someone who went to school for nutrition and dietetics to want to help people, maybe, yes, on the athletic performance side, and on the weight loss side. And I had made a career out of fitness modeling and bodybuilding, built up a large social media following, and I'm at this rock bottom. And what's so cool about this story is I started to go see you. I went to a bunch of different doctors at the time, and I did what most people would do. Hey, something's off in my body. I know something's wrong, so I should go to the doctor. So I went to a bunch of different gastros. At first, they did the basic blood work testing. They checked me for celiacs. They did the CBC testing, and they just said, oh, you have constipation. And then I was given, medication for that. And then I was put on thyroid medication. And then I was put on birth control, and then I was put on an antidepressant. And I even ended up going to the Mayo Clinic at one point, because now I could no longer use the restroom without doing an enema every single day to just go to the bathroom. And, they did some genetic testing, but even the best medical clinic in what's supposed to be the United States couldn't even help me. It was just given a bunch of medications, and don't get me wrong, I'm not ever against taking the medication, but I am 100% for getting to the root cause of what is really off in the body. And, that's when, I started to come to you. We did some testing, and what was so interesting, we found out that, my colon was completely dropping to the point in my body. And I was sent to the colorectal surgeon at that time, where now the solution was to cut out my entire large intestine at this point. And, it was that low point where I really had to make a decision. And I was desperate. I'm sure most people listening here who suffer with gut issues have maybe started to get to that point when you're I will do whatever I can to just start feeling good again. With how awful I felt in my body. And I was very much considering getting the surgery. I think I even remember telling you in the office, yes, I'm at that point. Just schedule me to get the surgery, just cut out my entire large intestine. But there was something in that moment that told me there was another solution. I needed to really fight and search to find more answers. And that's what really catapulted me to becoming obsessed with just learning everything I could about the gut and the gut microbiome, and how the little microbes in our gut control literally everything. And I did find out that I had a ton of, dysbiosis. I had SIBO, bacterial overgrowth. You could say I had some like intestinal permeability. I'm not sure what your philosophy is on that.
No, definitely.
All about that.
Okay, yeah. So I had.
No, by the way, so when some people are about this, so a lot of these things that she's talking about, if you're unfamiliar with dysbiosis, change in bacteria, the really dumbed down version is that you have less good, more bad. SIBO is bacteria growing where it shouldn't be. And when she says intestinal permeability, otherwise known as leaky gut, if you go to my colleagues, many of them will say leaky gut doesn't exist, but intestinal permeability, it is completely proven that it is a real thing. So this is science is catching up to the functional medicine community that's been saying this for a long time. So when you say that, that tells me that you have been looked at by traditional doctors at some point and gone, no, that doesn't exist. Or you've said things that other people have sort of dismissed.
Correct.
Yeah, dismissed.
Yeah. So it's always interesting to see where people fall when you talk about like leaky gut and all of these different things. But, that was what was off in my body. And because we know the gut, right, is connected. Do I pause when you cough too?
Oh, no. No, you don't at all.
This
is me. So I cleared my throat and I pressed a button, and Rachel is so observant that she said, "Oh, does that mean that we're paused?"
That was awesome.
That was great.
I didn't know if it paused all of our microphones
No,
or
you're good.
just your microphone. Okay.
Hey, Eric just got up and walked out. Did he pause? Like he does it all the time. Just keep going.
It's too. I'm also like, no, I'm trying to figure out like where to look to. This is like the first 3 podcasts. I don't know what I wanted to say there.
It's your first threesome podcast that you're trying to say?
That's what I was about to say, but I paused myself.
Well, so we're actually a little bit relaxed because our first threesome podcast included a Navy SEAL sniper.
Okay.
So he was a little bit more intense than you. And so, we're just more relaxed.
Yeah.
Shout out to the
Buttholes are a
Birdman.
little
Also.
weird in that moment.
Yeah, no, all good. You're good. But continue. I don't want to break your stride. That was really awesome where you were going with your story.
Yeah.
We have to throw in that part though. So, that's where I really started to learn all about the gut and how that was really connected to all of these systems. And I even started to do some different things to try to heal my microbiome. So I did the SIBO protocols. I was on the multiple rounds of Xifaxan and neomycin, and I would get some progress, and I would continue to relapse with everything. And the constipation was still a big issue. My skin's erect, my hair is falling out now at this point. And it was at that point where I really decided to do a much deeper dive. Now, I really believe that, SIBO, although we can look at it like it's the root cause or gut dysbiosis, it is still essentially part of the symptom, in a lot of ways. And for me, where I was at essentially in my life is I had a lot of emotional and physical stress. Mm-hmm. I was training to the extreme. I was at 10% body fat at the time in my life. And metabolically, what happens at that point is your entire system slows down, like your gut slows down. And we know a lot about the body's, sympathetic nervous response. And I was chronically in this state of fight or flight, and my gastrointestinal system was shut down. And not to mention, one thing about bodybuilders is, we try to avoid cortisol like as much as possible, just because it breaks down muscle tissue. It's very catabolic. And, we don't think about very often that the gut lining is also a muscle tissue. So when you get to this point where you are at 10% body fat and, you are that lean, and the physical stress on your body, and combine that with emotional stress, is our gut lining can break down from that high level of cortisol. And so I started to put these puzzle pieces together of like, okay, this is what actually was the root cause that led to a lot of my intestinal permeability and led to some of the bacteria overgrowth. And looking at my diet also at the time too, it was what I called bodybuilder kind of style diet. So it was like macro friendly. And what I mean by that is, I was eating the foods to allow me to be at a good body composition, but, it was full of artificial foods. It was full of like the pre-workouts, the post-workouts, artificial sweeteners, the emulsifiers. I don't know if you've heard of Walden Farms before, but it's like legit chemicals. It's like 0 calories, 0 fat, 0 anything, like these syrups and things. But like that's what we would do to try to get like any kind of flavor in the foods that we were eating, because we were just so deprived. I was addicted to like chewing gum, using even some of the natural sweeteners like stevia, but literally putting it in everything.
Everything, yeah.
Everything. So hindsight now looking back is I had this dietary stress, right? I was eating foods that were, yes, maybe not making me be overweight or anything like that, but they were terrible for my gut health and feeding a lot of the bad bacteria in my gut, leading to bacteria overgrowth. Metabolically, I was at a low body composition, which causes everything to kind of slow down. And then the reality was I was trying to also shame myself to being healthy and fit, which is so backwards when we think about it, because, you know, that's what I see so often, but we can't shame ourselves to health and we can't heal.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? You said at the same time I was trying to shame myself. What was going on in your brain at that time?
At that point in my life, I was coming from a massive place of unworthiness. And I think that's what happens very often in the fitness industry, or people even too who are on, let's say, the side where they are overweight. And I'm going to explain both of those. But the type A, they're perfectionist, the go people, you know, I think you can come at that from a healthy place, but I think it's also not a coincidence that most people who are type A and perfectionists also end up with gut issues. And I think part of the byproduct is because it's coming from a place of trying to prove something to themselves, trying to prove something to the world. And what is it? It's that sense of worthiness. It's that sense of I'm good enough. And that's what I mean when I say like trying to shame ourselves to being healthy and fit. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They're like, I hate my body. I don't like who I am. So I'm going to punish myself. I'm going to try to get myself to a place where I am, you know, I look good enough and I feel good enough in order for whose acceptance? My acceptance, someone else's acceptance, other world's acceptance. And I think that's like that type A perfectionist type who's trying to, what I say, shame themselves to being healthy and fit. But I think it can also be on the other end of the spectrum too, right? And this is the person who's overweight, who's unhealthy, that's not doing the things that they know they should be doing for their health, that's making up all the excuses in the world as to why they should eat the McDonald's and the fried foods and the fast foods. And they also don't believe they're sometimes worthy or respect their body at the core. So I think very often, you know, when it comes to healing, one of the big philosophies I carry is like the whole person must heal for the gut to function optimally, because the reason why we struggle with food addiction and the type of foods that we're eating, and we struggle with, you know, whether it's the emotional stress that plays such a role in the gut, really comes down to that way that we're really loving ourselves and that we're showing up for ourselves at the core. So that's what I mean, where I went a really, really deep dive, you know, into my own healing. And I had to really start to work on this emotional piece for myself. I definitely had to make some dietary changes as I was learning a lot about gut health and what allows or what foods feed a good and healthy microbiome. At the time, I couldn't tolerate actually a lot of healthy foods even. So I would bloat up like a balloon. I would look like I was 6 months pregnant. So I had to go on a more restrictive diet for a period of time. I call this like a gut healing diet, which is very different than gut health. I think gut health is something that's long-term sustainable, that builds a very robust and healthy microbiome, where gut healing is short-term, it's specific in order to bring the body back to homeostasis. So I couldn't tolerate a lot of foods. I was on a low FODMAP diet, which is essentially, for those who don't know, I pulled out a bunch of carbohydrates that were feeding a lot of the bacteria in my gut. I had to do a lot of, you know, supplement protocols, some of the antibiotic protocols to pull back a lot on like the training side, and then work, of course, on my nutrition and just that relationship with food. And it didn't happen overnight. It was like a process, like, don't get me wrong. But I think once I started to put some of these puzzle pieces together and really understand, you know, this is really what caused the bacterial overgrowth and my gut to be off in the first place, that was really where I was finally able to heal and get to a place. And I think with healing the gut too, it's getting to a point where we are, 80% where we can take that next step forward. Where now to this day, I am at a point where I have zero gut issues, like none, non-existent. I won't say if I go out and eat something that's like terribly unhealthy, I don't get like a tummy ache or something like that. And I think that part's normal.
It's probably normal.
That part's normal.
Yeah.
A lot of us can get that, but I'm at the point where, my gut is incredibly healthy. Mentally, I'm incredibly healthy. The relationship with myself is where it needs to be. And I've made an entire business now out of doing just this for people. It's getting to the root cause. And I say root causes plural, and helping them heal and get back to their health.
So that's where you are today. I kind of want to go back to something that you mentioned on this, because that's first, number one, awesome description of your journey. I think that's pretty intensive, and I feel like that I've experienced most of it with you, reliving it here again today. Mm-hmm. But there's a piece in there where I feel like it's somewhat critical for anybody who's going to make a change to recognize maybe within themselves where they're getting stuck. And you said it multiple times, but the emotional stress that you were feeling when you were down the worst, you said the reason that you went down to Baylor, you had these certain physical fitness goals that you wanted to be able to achieve. Mm-hmm. And so while you're doing it, and you have this idea on what it is that your body was supposed to look like, how you should be finishing in these competitions. And then it's almost like you had this internal struggle within yourself. You knew that you weren't feeling right, but you almost probably, and you didn't say this, but I almost get the sense that you didn't want other people to know that you were having health issues, because it doesn't look like the physique, the body, the product that you're putting in front of people. So now you almost get caught in this horrific catch-22 that has nothing to do, and nobody would think less of you, but you don't know that at the time, that yes, this healthy looking woman may actually have to tell you that she needs to change some things that have allowed her to look like this, because I don't want to be a fraud. I don't want to be taken less seriously because I'm experiencing these problems. I think it's amazing that you were able to finally, at what point, get to that breaking point and say, I've got to change something. And I think a lot of people get stuck there. And you used overweight as another comparison. I think that's really, really smart, because it's almost like that they're negotiating their ability to get healthier by saying, well, I already look like this. Who cares? Mm-hmm. And both of those are, I never thought of it that way until you said it.
Coming from the same place. Yeah. They're still coming from a massive place of unworthiness.
And neither is true.
Yeah. And neither true. It's just that belief system that we carry.
And it's internal. Mm-hmm. So I felt like that was probably one of the more inspiring pivots in your story. How did you recognize for yourself, I don't want to live like this. I know that I had these goals, but I need to tend to Rachel and her health first. And then what gave you the confidence to pursue that?
Yeah. I will say, I don't know if I felt like necessarily like a fraud, because at the time, like it was just about the physical, like macros and training and all of that. And it wasn't focused on like gut health and hormones and everything like that I focus on now here today. But I think for me, I had to get to that rock bottom place. Mm-hmm. And I hope that most people don't have to get to that place, right? But I think very often that is what it takes for a lot. Like I had to get to that point where my options were like, do you want to remove your large intestine because your gut is so off and you can't even use the restroom any day without an enema, and the quality of my life just freaking sucked with where I was at. So my option was either heal, like do the work of what you need to do to get better, or take this other road, which that was my options I felt like that I had at the time. And one thing I believe about myself is I'm somebody who chooses to do what's hard, who does what's difficult. I wouldn't be able to build the business and everything here today without it, bodybuilding, all of that. So I took, a part of me that was maybe kind of a detriment with like that laser focus part with bodybuilding, and I pivoted it over into like my healing and learning everything that I could about gut health. And I became an expert, you know, in it as a byproduct of it. And I think that's how very often a lot of experts are born. They go through something, they have to just like research and learn so much about it. I don't think I would naturally just be interested in wanting to spend hours every single day, like learning about the gut microbiome, like without having to walk through that. But I'd say for me, it really took me getting to a point where my healing came first more than anything else in my life. And I think so often we make every excuse up in the world. You know, maybe after this vacation, I'll start. Maybe after, you know, this holiday or whatever it may be. We put our healing on the back burner. And it takes getting to that point where our healing and our health comes first over anything in our life. And for some, it is that rock bottom because that's like what your options are. But I think it doesn't have to be. It can be that point where we get to, we're just like, you know what? I'm just going to go all in on me and my health. We can call that personal development, whatever we want to call it. And just getting us back to the place where we feel good in our body.
Let me just pause right there for a second, because what you're saying, if somebody else is listening, they're just like, oh, well, you know, she's this bodybuilder, she is what it is. You said something really interesting, which is, I'm this person, I'm doing this, and I was betrayed by my body. And then you commented on the emotional and the physical stress. So we can walk through the science of what happened. But basically, when you have that kind of stress, that changes the motility. You can decrease the acetylcholine. There's all these physiologic things that go on. And ultimately, when you were talking about not being able to go, and when you and I were talking, I'm like, look, your transverse colon falls into your pelvis. It's because it was too much weight to be supported by the ligaments that were there. And then when you said, but I needed to really focus on this, you did something that you just glossed over, which probably was super hard. And it's the equivalent of somebody that may be overweight and has never exercised. You had to back off the one thing that you really loved, which was aggressive exercise, weightlifting, controlling your diet, trying to give you a sense of control. Yeah. So when you were talking about some of these things that you were eating, you had to realize, wait a minute, I'm putting some things that are actually harming my body, even though all these other competitors that look amazing, this is what we're all doing as a community. So what you did is equally difficult I'm going to back off the one thing that I love, that I've been doing forever. So that's impressive. So it isn't like, oh, well, she just quit working out and then she got better.
No, not at all.
No, yeah. It had to be an identity shift, you know, honestly, for me at that point in my life. My identity was so wrapped up in Rachel the bodybuilder, Rachel the fitness model, and all of that. And I ended up recreating a new identity for myself, which is ultimately the business that I have, you know, here today, which is, you know, now it is taking more of this holistic approach, which is the emotional side, which is the functional, the gut health side. It is all of those areas combined, you know, here together. And I'm losing my train of thought.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna get you back on that really quick, because your journey is absolutely fascinating. You use some great lines like that, but betrayed by my body is really fascinating. And then when you've said emotional several times, you said this, so it gets me thinking that when you have a client, what would be your typical client that comes to find you, and where do you start peeling back? Because on our last episode, we actually had the honor of having Lane Garrett on our show, and she is a psychologist that deals with sexual trauma. And she was basically helping me learn how to communicate with my patients, that a lot of these people that see me for gastrointestinal health have trauma in their background. And that's where some of the emotional stuff is at. So when you have a client, when you see somebody is it somebody that's a bodybuilder that comes to see you? Is it
actually very rarely? I don't get, if any, bodybuilders anymore. I will say I work a lot with the women who are the type A kind of perfectionist women. I feel like I just end up attracting them based off of what I'm putting out there. But you know what's so interesting about my brand is I really feel like I've been able to now bridge the gap between the fitness industry and also more of like that functional side. So people come to me because they're like, hey, like you look the part, you're a living, breathing example. Like you're going to help me get fit. You're going to help me get in shape, but you're going to also help me, you know, heal from a lot of my gut issues. You're going to help me get to the root cause of that. And I've heard from so many people, they'll go to like the different physicians and they don't really take into account nutrition. They don't take into account, you know, some of their other goals, and maybe they do have body composition goals too. They want to optimize, they want to feel good. And then they just give them, you know, here's maybe a medication protocol, maybe it's an antimicrobial protocol or different types of protocols, but they're missing like that full picture really of ultimately what they want. So with my clients, we get massively clear on, you know, what they are wanting to essentially get to. And I try to get very clear on like the feeling versus like the tactical outcome. And what I mean by that is, you know, instead of just saying, I want to lose 30 pounds and I want to heal my gut, really getting clear on, okay, how is it that you want to feel on a day-to-day basis?
Nice.
So they're like, I want to wake up and I want to feel excited about the day. I want to look in the mirror. I want to feel proud of the person who's looking back at me. I want to be able to like eat food and not have to worry about like all of my symptoms. And we get really, really massively clear on what this looks like for them. So one, it's not tied to, okay, I'm just going to lose 30 pounds and then I'm going to be happy, or, you know, I just need to get rid of all of these issues, but how do they want to feel on a day-to-day basis? And from there, that's where we're really able to explore, you know, through lab testing, also through looking at their nutrition, through looking at some more of like just their lifestyle and stressors, what we need to do to get them in alignment to experiencing and creating how they want to feel on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes there are serious things that are off. Like I do microbiome testing on my clients, and we'll see, you know, a lot of inflammation. We'll see, you know, immune upregulation. We'll see some of the dysbiosis. I've had people come back with parasites. You know, we see all of these things that are off in the microbiome. But the most important piece is identifying what caused that to become off in the first place. Now, if you have like a parasite, like you picked up a parasite somewhere, it wasn't like because of the emotional stressors or anything like that. But for most people, I find that there's a combination of some of those root causes, plural, between their nutrition and maybe also it's not always just like the lack of the education piece, but it's that relationship with food kind of piece in it. And that's why very often I think it's not always just like, hey, knowing what to eat is the problem. It's really kind of that habit piece and that self piece really intertwined in with that. I get them going on a lot of the functional protocols. We change up their nutrition. We kind of go through some gut healing, getting them into gut health protocols. But then we really combine that a lot with the habits, their goals. Sometimes it's working on their morning routine. Sometimes it's getting them to exercise. Sometimes it's getting them clear on, you know, what this vision is that they have for their life. And it's so individualized. And that's why I love this work that I get to do. But that's where I feel like it's so different than just here's some supplements, you know, here's just follow this diet. It's really helping people, you know, heal, like, and step into the best versions of themselves. And I'm just kind of like that guide of pointing out things, and I can only see it because I've walked through it myself.
I think it's interesting that you pointed out that you want the client to say how they want to feel every day. And it isn't about, and you use the example of 30 pounds. So it's like if someone's standing on a mountaintop and they see down below that I want to get here. Well, one way would be just to jump with no parachute and then land there. It's a terrible way to get there. Let's just say that that's 30-pound loss is sitting there. But what I hear you describing is let's find the safe way to get you to where your goals are. And more than likely along the way, you're going to pick up better habits, make better choices. You're going to find self-value. You're going to begin to appreciate yourself on this journey. And before you know it, you're going to arrive at the destination that you envisioned, and you'll be happier and you'll get there safely. Because if you think about the way that people lose weight, you could do many, many things to lose weight. Like you were getting your body. Yeah, exactly. Getting prepared for competition. But it wasn't helping your body be its best self. And it just makes sense that whenever we talk about the reason that sometimes people put on weight, it's because of chronic inflammation, which could be related to emulsifiers or poor things that get our additives in food or whatever it happens to be. What you're highlighting is making better choices for you and your health will ultimately deliver happiness and more than likely deliver a physique and things like that reflect what you're doing for yourself. Is that kind of where you're taking it?
Yeah. I mean, I think we are emotional people. We make emotional decisions and we're essentially chasing feelings, right? Ultimately. So sometimes it's not enough of a motivating factor of like, I just want to lose 30 pounds. But when I can get massively clear on how I want to feel every single day, I can actually start doing things to get myself to feel that way every single day. So let's say really the person who wants to lose 30 pounds, they want to feel proud of themselves.
Right.
They want to feel confident. They want to look in the mirror. They want to be proud of the person who's looking back at them. There's so many things that can allow a person to step into that. And a lot of my clients, what's so amazing about this process is they reach that point far before they actually get to the like weight loss goal or like fully having like healed their gut. They get to the point where they are proud of the person and they are feeling more confident in themselves. And it comes from very often doing the things that they say that they're going to do every single day, following through on those commitments. Sometimes it is getting in a new exercise regimen, taking time out to spend time with themselves, like working on their relationship with themselves. It is following through on the nutrition side, even when sometimes it's inconvenient. So all of those things, when we start to really equate those to, hey, I feel confident in myself. I'm proud of this person for doing the work. It makes the goal not as big of a deal, but people are also able to reach the goal that much easier.
I love that.
I think also that when somebody talks to you and they look at you and you're like, look, this is a picture of me on stage, and you're just shredded and you're up there and you're the epitome of what everyone just says, geez, I would love to look like that. And you're like, I was anxious, I was depressed, I was unhappy. That gives everybody a step back to go, no, it's more important to be here first.
Yep.
This will follow. The brain become emotionally there. And just the fact that you went through that and could be honest like that really gets people in a state of mind where they're prepared to say, yes, I need to be ready. The weight loss, it'd be great if I hit 30, but even if I don't, or even if I do, it's the way I feel as I'm going through it is the most important thing. Because if I, just like Eric said, if I jump off this cliff and land, I'm like, oh, I'm 30 pounds lighter, but I can't walk. I feel horrible. It's the equivalent of I did this, but I'm emotionally a wreck. I'm not sleeping well. I have anxiety. My relationships with my partners are horrible.
Well, returning to better health is going to allow your body to produce the serotonin and the right amounts of dopamine. And if you have those things as the reward centers, the natural, as you put it, the emotional stability to achieve those goals,
I mean,
you're going to be so much happier.
You're so right about that, because I would love to get into the deep dive about what was going on with your metabolites, your neurotransmitters and this and that, and why this was happening. And then it makes total sense. And it's like, oh my gosh, now hindsight's 2020. It's like, oh, that makes total sense now.
Yeah.
Like all of it, we were treating the wrong organ.
Like I highly doubt that everybody that you were competing against at the time didn't feel exactly like you did.
It's a common saying in the bodybuilding world, typically the person who's winning up on stage is the most unhealthy person, actually. Yeah, it's very common. Bodybuilding is, I won't say never, but most often not a healthy sport. It's very egotistical. It's, of course, just literally about the physical. They're like, no one's judging me. Actually, everybody's judging you like for how you look, practically naked. Like, how can you not? Like, it is.
No one's judging me.
Like,
I feel like I should enter, wear Speedo, and just completely. At least I'm healthy, bitches.
Yeah.
Walk off.
And people, they dedicate their entire life to looking a certain way to get the approval of a judge.
Yeah.
For how they look. It is one of the most unhealthy sports. And like I said, I think there's the beautiful part of fitness. Fitness is still a huge part of my life. If you follow me on social media, you'll see me crushing in the gym every single day. I still got 6-pack abs. That didn't ever go away. But what changed is the way I was really viewing health, because I had health in a box. Mm-hmm. So it was go to the gym, lift the weights every single day, no excuses kind of stuff. follow this meal plan. I don't care what you're going through. You just hit it to the T, hit the macros. And like I was like this robot. We put health in this box and we wonder why so many of us struggle with our health.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's different for everybody. Like where I'm at in my life right now, you know, some days the most loving thing I can do for myself is being Rachel, get off your ass, go to the gym and get in a workout. And the fruits of that are going to be, I feel better. I'm like, oh, that was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. I feel awesome after. And there are some days where the most loving thing for myself is saying, you know what? You're good. Like slow down. Just go for a walk today. Just relax. And you know what the fruits of that is? I feel energized after. I feel rested. So I always say like you will know them by their fruits based off of how you feel after. That's actually a biblical quote. And, you know, when we're choosing to do the things that are most loving for us, it's going to be that positive feedback loop every single time. Sometimes the most loving thing for myself is like allowing myself to go out and enjoy some foods that are probably not so gut friendly. And I feel okay after because it was me enjoying that one moment. It was about the social connection and then I got right back on it. But that could be very different for somebody else who's overweight, who's obese, who has all of this inflammation, who's diabetic and their gut's a wreck and they're like, oh, self-love, just eat whatever I want. Like, no, that's not self-love at all. It is choosing to eat foods that love you back. It's choosing to do the things that are best for your body, but it's going to look different where you're at ultimately in your journey. And I think that's what I've really had to learn. Like that's what health is. It is really that intuitive part of us and listening to that. And some days it is crushing in the gym. Some days it's not.
So I followed your Instagram and you know, you do some things to self-punish yourself as well.
No, like what?
Like when you sat in that
the ice bath. I don't view that as punishment.
Her teeth were chattering, and she's like, I'm doing this because I know this is good for me. And I'm just like, oh no.
His biggest fear is cold.
I do it every day.
Oh my
Every single day I do ice bath a day.
You and the Birdman. The Birdman called me up. So he's the Navy SEAL and I met him after he was doing an ice bath. That's how we actually met at a sauna that I go to. And he was giving me shit about that. It was 30 degrees here. He called me at 8 a.m. I'm about ready to scope. I'm like, yeah, hello. I'm like, hey man, you all right? And he's like, just sitting in my pool, wondering what you're doing. I'm like, it's 30 degrees. I'm like, you asshole. I'm about ready to do a colonoscopy. He's like, well, you're in a butt and I'm in a pool. Have fun. And he hung up. 30 degrees, yeah. No, so I saw that one. She sat there and did her whole like post while
he could not do
teeth
that.
chattering.
Ken cannot do that.
But it's not coming from a place of punishment, actually.
It's punishment. I don't care what anybody says. I believe it's a huge conspiracy. It sucks. It absolutely sucks. I cannot stand it.
It's actually great.
I'm with you, Rachel.
I know it's probably
great.
you and a bunch of people like Huberman and stuff are all talking.
All your blood flow goes
Ron
to
Patrick,
your gut. Great for vagal tone.
Every time I've done a cold plunge, I'm in there for a few minutes and I'm like, this is a friggin' joke. I know right now Huberman and Rogan and Patrick, they're all laughing. They're like, can you believe people are actually doing this shit?
But you want to know why I do that? So, like, yes, we can talk about the physical benefits. Like, it's great for your vagus nerve. It's great for, like, boosting endorphins after. I do it because of the conversation I get to have with myself when I'm sitting in that freezing cold water. And what's so interesting is the conversation has shifted because the first time I got in the ice bath, which I can imagine, like when you get in it, it's like, get out right now.
My conversation
this is
every
awful.
Time.
Like that's
what are you doing?
And then what do? We listen and we get out, you know, in that moment. But the conversation I have with myself now is like, you got this. You can do this. You've done harder things before. You can push through this. And the conversation with myself has shifted sitting in that freezing cold 37 degrees water. And I view it as a positive now because...
Wait. Is the water moving or is it stagnant?
It's pretty stagnant. I mean, maybe if I'm splashed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because you know it's colder if it's moving.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because you don't form that thermal layer.
Yeah.
I don't know why y'all looking at me. It sounds great.
But I really believe like in that mindset piece of everything ultimately in this. And I think that's why I love the morning routine stuff. I love the ice bath because it's really, cultivating the best version of me in that moment. And that conversation shows up in other areas of my life too. So when there's other things that I don't feel like doing, right? Like how many people don't feel like having to eat the healthy food? What they want to do in that moment is, okay, I just want to get the fast food, what's quick and easy and convenient. This is when those type of conversations, I know that's maybe an extreme version of the ice bath, but hey, we get to say you know what, we can do this. We got this. And I think we're in an epidemic too of doing what's easy, most convenient, what we just feel like doing always.
100%.
And sometimes, it is acting in spite of thoughts, feeling, moods, and emotions. And, if you think of with a kid, and a parent, the parent loving the kid is being I know you don't want to do this, but it's because I love you, because I know, this is good for you. And it's actually sometimes doing that to ourselves too. Being I know you don't feel like doing this. I know you don't feel like eating the veggies, insoluble fiber, the polyphenols and all that stuff. But this is the most loving thing for you. And really leaning into that essentially too. So I think the ice bath is actually self-love.
You got to see it. She's boldly goes in there routinely, and it's just it makes me feel.
I did it twice today.
I feel like she's doing it to me on purpose, just calling me out as a
You
whip.
should just call him out the next time that you're on there.
This is for you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that for sure.
I want to ask you a question about the business. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's listening and they're like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in meeting with her. You discussed that you're a hormone expert. Also, you do unique tests. What are some of the functional, let me rephrase it. What are some of the things that you typically do that are atypical in an allopathic medicine practice?
So we do the functional medicine testing. We do the gut microbiome testing. We don't do the SIBO or any kind of that testing, but that gives me a good idea if someone has dysbiosis, if they have a lot of inflammation based on their calprotectin levels, if they have secretory IgA levels that are off. We can look at zonulin levels for some of that intestinal permeability. So it gives me a good idea of what's happening in the gut, but I also believe in looking at the other systems in the body because the gut is connected to all these other systems, and it also can really help with diving into some of those root causes. So we do hormone and adrenal testing, and we look at how your body's actually metabolizing your hormones because that's really important. We don't just have one estrogen. We have 3 types of estrogen that has to be metabolized through the liver, through phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. And then that actually 3rd phase is through the gut. So I can see somebody who maybe has some gut dysbiosis and their gut is off, but then they're also estrogen dominant too. If I'm looking at a female, and we can trace it back to, okay, this is stemming from the gut, but also there are some poor detoxification issues actually happening through the liver. So for getting rid of your estrogen dominance and your heavy menstrual cycles and your poor mood and the weight gain, part of it is really going to be first healing the gut, getting you pooping every single day, getting your gut microbiome in a good place. But we also need to work on the detoxification side, through the liver. We'll do micronutrient testing too to see if there's deficiencies. I'd say most people are very deficient in their omega-3 fatty acids. I'd say 9 out of 10 people who I run that on, and I'd say most people are also pretty high in their omega-6s, arachidonic acid and linoleic acid. So that, of course, plays already a big role in not only their gut, but also their mental health too, because those omega fatty acids cross through the blood-brain barrier. We will do some other testing looking at their blood sugar, insulin levels. So if they're insulin resistant, that can play a big role. I say the 4 big horsemen that lead to dis-ease in the body are going to be inflammation. That's first and foremost, but where is that coming from? Dietary, environmental, emotional. Those can all be triggers for that inflammation. It can be catabolic physiology. I'd say that's what I had quite a bit of. So high levels of cortisol, the body's really in that breakdown state. Insulin resistance that can be brought on through diet. And then the last piece can be more of the oxidative stress. So we can look at that. We can actually look at oxidative stress markers too.
What's the cause of the oxidative stress?
Oxidative stress oftentimes can, one, I'd say be toxin buildup in the body. So mold. We do look for heavy metals quite a bit too. one woman I did some testing on, she had the worst microbiome test I've ever seen, like everything off the charts. She had a ton of oxidative stress in her body. So that's like that free radical damage. I always give the analogy, like if you had an apple and you cut it in half and you put it on the table and you came back and you would see that the apple was brown, that's that oxidative stress. Premature aging leads to cancer and a lot of bad things in the body. So we can test for that and, of course, support the body with needed antioxidants, things like glutathione if needed. Polyphenols, I know you're a big fan of. Those are awesome for oxidative stress in the body. Getting the gut in a good place, decreasing inflammation as much as possible. Looking at thyroid too. So essentially we're looking at these systems. We're looking at the neuroendocrine system. We're looking at the gut as a system. And then we're also looking at detoxification along with nutrition, looking at, their lifestyle too. And that really helps us create an awesome game plan for everybody.
I love it.
That's awesome.
So what does someone do and what's their experience like if they want to link up with Rachel and get started in this process? What does that look like?
Yeah, they can check out my website, rachelscheer.com. We actually offer a free 30-minute call to everybody, getting to know their goals, their background, their history, just make sure it's a good fit on both ends. And then we get them started with coaching and testing.
It's SCH.
SCH. I always say it's like cheer, but with an S at the front.
There you go.
People thought it said Rachel's cheer for a long time, and they thought I was a cheerleader. Not a cheerleader.
Not a cheerleader. Not a cheerleader. Well, we'll have everything in the show notes as well, but we just want to make sure for those who are just listening.
And then you also have a great podcast called Scheer Madness.
Scheer Madness podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dr. Brown's coming on for the second time.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Scheer Madness. SCHEER Madness.
It's madness.
Yeah. And then Instagram?
Instagram is at Rachel Scheer. That's my personal Instagram. And then my practice Instagram is at Rachel Scheer Nutrition.
Yeah. And so I don't know when you fill up on Instagram, but you have to be getting at the limit, right? I mean, you got 10 million
when you're
followers,
just you're
right?
good, you're done.
You're good, you're done.
You're good.
Everyone in the world follows you now.
You're done.
Everyone.
Rachel has her own server.
I've had some people impersonate me on Instagram too. So
It seems like that would be hard.
no, this was a full-time job that this guy, I'm assuming it's a guy because I don't feel like women would do this, but they literally copied every post, everything over.
Oh. Okay, you gotta understand where I'm coming from. I thought you meant someone who was trying to look like you, and then you told me it was a guy trying to look like you.
I was like, holy cow.
No.
He's,
Making a fake account, trying to impersonate, and then to, get people's money and doing it that way.
Oh, yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's neat.
Yeah. Well, we'll have
kinda
all of your
a cool
official
thing,
stuff.
though.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
oh,
flattering.
cool.
Yeah.
Except you
But
don't
we
wanna
will
know
have
they're
all of your
selling.
official links in show notes, both at gutcheckproject.com and on YouTube.
So everything you're talking about qualifies you for something super special,
Ooh, I've been
really
wanting
limited
one.
to only my patients with the WWYMS. What would your microbiome say? So I give this to my patients. My son
just got
came up
Doug.
with that whole acronym right there.
I love it.
And so when you're out there, what I tell my patients is, next time you're about ready to do something detrimental, what would your microbiome say? Maybe it's that time where your microbiome's like, you've earned it. You can do this. It's okay. You can have this little, this little thing. But next time, if you don't sleep, or better yet, if you're in a stressful situation, if you're arguing with your spouse, point to your bracelet and go, hey, you're messing with my
good for my gut.
microbiome. Why
Yeah.
don't we just take it down a notch? All right.
I love
So
this.
you've earned the bracelet of the what would my microbiome say?
That
But
is amazing.
my Neanderthal wrists seem to fill it out a little bit better than
Yeah.
this thing that is like an armband.
Yeah, she
for
goes
you.
all the way up to the elbow.
Goes on my
Maybe we
biceps. to bring
need to
it.
buy some. Need to buy some new sizes.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your journey, how you help people. I mean, I was fascinated. This is I enjoyed this visit more than the first one when we didn't know what we were doing with our show. This was far better to
Always
have.
gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Better
this
and
is
better.
great. I just want to, I guess the main thing is your journey. And when I said at the very beginning that you're going to see how this has empowered you to do this,
Definitely.
and what this has done is you have learned to empower other people and help so many people. And if somebody's listening and they go, yeah, I want to look at myself and this is how I want to feel, they need to contact you. They can get a free consultation for the first call, not consultation or whatever it is that you do.
Coaching.
Yeah, coaching, but super important that there's options like this.
Definitely.
And I will be totally honest. And you know how I'm a gastroenterologist. I'm a busy gastroenterologist. And a lot of this stuff, I'm just not, I don't have the time. I don't think that, from an emotional standpoint, because when you're going through it, I was like, it makes total sense. You're depleting acetylcholine, which is going to affect this, which is going to do this. Then the hormone level is going to shift, and then you're going to have decreased serotonin and norepinephrine. And then that explains why you're not moving. We were literally focusing on the one organ the whole time.
Yeah.
That's where we need both.
Yeah.
And that's where I think people really need to do both. They need the tactical stuff. They do need to do the protocols, take the tool. They need to get the proper testing done and work on healing that piece. But we can't just expect that to do all of the work for us if what caused the body to be off in the first place is never addressed.
Well, I think it's great also that you live the life that you're trying to coach others to do. So I've known you for almost 4 years, Ken, even longer. And exactly what she's saying is exactly what it is that she's been doing and what you've been living. And it's great to have an example for someone to turn to that could say, this is what was helping me. I've been where you've been. There's a way out. And I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. It's my honor.
Episode 90. Fascinating. Please contact Rachel Scheer. We're going to put her website, her Instagram, and then if you have the guts, challenge her to a cold plunge challenge.
I think most people will do it better than you, but it's okay, Ken. Thank y'all. That's going to do it for episode 90.
Yeah.